Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Gant. I'm the chair of the Central Pines Regional Council Board of Delegates. I'd like to welcome you guys to the February Executive Committee meeting on this beautiful early spring, late winter evening. Quick side note, I'm from Asheville, and it's beautiful there, obviously, but I think the springtime in the Piedmont is better and hard to beat anywhere in the country. So just a couple of reminders, this meeting is being recorded. We also have the raise your hand function if you'd like to speak. Because this is a virtual meeting, we ask you guys to identify yourselves by name each time you speak to comply with virtual meeting laws. The state law also requires that votes be conducted by a roll call to comply with the virtual meeting rules. And Beth Seidel will call the roll each time a vote is needed. So Beth, would you start the roll call, please?
Sure. All right, we will start with Aberdeen.
And Beth, she is joining right now, so it might take a second for her to connect to audio.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Wilma, I'm gonna mark you as present. I see you on. Apex.
Brett Gant, present.
Carborough.
Randy Haven O'Donnell, present.
Chatham County. City of Durham. Durham County.
Michelle Burton, present.
Johnston County. Lee County. No, I saw Mr. Smith earlier. I see you there.
Kirk Smith, Lee County, present.
Gotcha. Moore County. I think I see Mr. Adams on there. Orange County.
Gene Hamilton, present.
Sally Green, alternate, present.
Pittsburgh.
Pamela Baldwin, present.
Sanford. Selma. Wake County.
Susan Evans, present.
All right, we have quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know everybody here is super busy, and it's appreciated that you're here to serve on this executive committee. Next, we have the Get to Know CPRC section. This is a section I've asked for when I joined as chair to kind of help us appreciate where we come from as a regional council. I'll read this to you guys. This is pretty good. During the May 26, 1971 meeting of the Research Triangle Regional Planning Commission, the first conversations about a future regional organization were discussed. Mr. Lewis Crabtree of the Soil Conservation Service presented a slide tape. I assume that was actually slide tape showing material presented at the May 11th, 1971 Governor's Conference regarding regionalization and a new Region J. Board member William McLaren said that representatives from Lee and Johnston counties have expressed interest in a regional organization during the meeting. Research Triangle Regional Planning Commission Director Pearson Stewart reported during the meeting that Governor Scott at the May meeting said the following, and this is in quotes: "A lead regional organization will be designated by the state in each of the regions. The designations will be made by the North Carolina Department of Administration. Only one legally constituted lead organization created by general purpose local governments will be designated in each region. The designated regional organization must have its memberships open to all general purpose local governments within the region." And with that, we had the idea of a regional council, and fast forward 50 years later, here we are. So, Next on the agenda is a review of the agenda. Hopefully everyone has seen the agenda, and does anyone have any changes that they'd like to put forward? Okay, great. Well, if not, then we will proceed with the agenda. Okay, wonderful. Next are the presentations and recognitions, and the first is a welcoming of new delegates to the executive committee. On the screen, you see that we have new delegates from Chatham County. Amanda Robertson is the delegate, and the alternative delegate is Katie Kinlan. Are either of those folks on the call today by any chance? We'd love to hear a little more about who you guys are.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Miss Robertson is actually in the hospital, so we're thinking about her.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Miss Kinlan, I don't think is here tonight, but I am planning to meet with her on Friday to talk a little bit more about the regional council and get her oriented.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lee, for that. And I wish the best. I think we all wish the best for Miss Robertson, and look forward to meeting Katie and Amanda. Next, we have I don't know if it's going to be a president. Oh yeah, there we go. Next, we have a new delegate from Lee County, Kirk Smith. Welcome, Kirk. Would you come on and say a few things about yourself? All right, Kirk, are you talking?
It looks like he actually may have dropped off.
Okay.
I think he was having some issue with his mic before.
Okay.
So he might have.
That's hilarious. Well, next break we have in the meeting, we're going to have to see if Mr. Smith's on and get him to say a few words. But welcome, Kirk. Oh, okay. Lee, you have something to say? Okay.
Yeah, just real quick. Commissioner Adams from Moore County was not able to be with us at the last meeting, but I see that, and we welcomed him, but I see he's here today. So wanted to make sure we recognize Commissioner Adams from Moore County.
Yes. Mr. Adams, you want to say something about yourself and in your county? Perhaps. Oh.
He is on and unmuted, but if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Well, we'll get there eventually. Okay. Well, let's move on then. And if they are able to come on and come off mute, we'd love to hear more about themselves. Next, we have the Foreign Trade Zone sponsorship request. You guys may recall we've had one of these recently and learned all about the Foreign Trade Zone. This one is for Biogen. And I believe we have Lindsay Whitson on to introduce this item.
Yeah, hi. Before we have the Biogen folks provide their presentation, I'll just give a really quick rundown of FTZ, so Foreign Trade Zone. Next slide, please. For those who don't know, we at Central Pines since 1983 have served as the grantee and administrator of our Foreign Trade Zone program. And unlike our Central Pines region, that's 7 counties, it actually extends a total of 15 counties. You can see that in the map at the bottom of the slide, which 15 counties that includes. Most people on this call might know, but for those who don't know, the typical process is when a potential site wants to seek sponsorship of an application to become a foreign trade zone. They first come to our Foreign Trade Zone board and present about their application. Same presentation that they'll be providing tonight. So this has just been a practice that we've followed over the years. They first present to our FTZ board, and then now they present to the Central Pines Executive Committee or Central Pines Board of Delegates for the final approval of sponsorship. So with that, I'll just go ahead and hand it over, I believe, to Michael's presenting. And then at the end of his presentation, obviously, we'll save space for any questions.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. For the slides, do you have the slides and are you going to move? Okay. All right.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. I was just checking. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Prasma. I'm the head of manufacturing for Biogen for this new production site that we just built called GTM. So today I'm going to ask for your support for getting free trade zone designation for the new site. So our plan is to perform clinical label and packaging for our clinical products for those clinical trials that we launch. So the next slide. So just some background about Biogen. So we were founded in 1978 by 2 Nobel laureates. We were one of the first biotech companies. So back then, we were one of the ones that sort of started with biotech. Right now, we have 7,570 employees worldwide. We have a little less than $10 billion in revenue in 2023. We ship to 90 countries throughout the world. And we have 3 main manufacturing sites, 2 of which were in North Carolina. Next slide. So some of our focus, we pride ourselves in really trying to challenge or some of these complex and really devastating diseases. So we appreciate the challenge, we look for the challenge, and we try to develop and innovate for some of these really devastating, these tragic kind of illnesses that people have. So first one is Alzheimer's. Everyone's pretty familiar with it. It's the #1 cause of it has 44 million patients worldwide, and 1 out of 3 seniors are going to have Alzheimer's disease or some form of dementia. The other one was Avonex, or our product was Avonex for multiple sclerosis. 2.8 million people worldwide with it, and we have over 1 million people on treatment. Third one, postpartum depression. So there's 50,000 patients in the US, and 1 of 8 mothers report experiencing some part of postpartum depression. And the last one that we're targeting is rare diseases. So ALS, it's very devastating, 3 to 5 years life expectancy from symptoms onset. 350,000 people are living right now with ALS. Friedreich's ataxia is a new one for us. The life expectancy is only 37 years, and 15,000 people have that. The other one, SMA, so that's a disease for kids at birth. 1 in about 11,000 live births are affected. So those are the ones that we're targeting. Some of the things that we would do at this site is for some of these new therapies, for some of these rare diseases, some of these diseases, we would make the label and the packaging for the clinical trial material. Next slide. So just a map of our 2 campuses here in North Carolina. We are actually straddling the Durham County, Wake County line. We started with our RTP Bio. That was the first one that we have. It sits on about 156 acres, has 1,200 employees right now. The other one is the pharma site. It's at 900 Davis Drive, a little bit just across the street with 280 employees. And that is where the new facility's been built, GTM. Next slide. We've also been very actively engaged in the community. So Biogen's kind of been with North Carolina for quite a long time, since 1985. So with these 2 campuses, so we have a lot of local partnerships with the Department of Labor, BTech, NC Biotech Impact, RTP Foundation, Regional Transportation Alliance. We also work a lot with the schools. So NC State, which is my alma mater, UNC, NC Central, as well as Shaw University. So we're extremely active in the kind of the BTech, the biotech program, and bringing some of those young students into the workforce. Next slide. So this is just a timeline for the bio site. So in 1995, we actually started that site. And this sort of demonstrates some of the expansion and how we've invested in North Carolina. You can see that maybe every couple years or a decade, we've been kind of keep building and building and getting larger and larger. One thing to note, we actually did win an ISP award, which is an industry award for one of the facilities, which was the FEM facility in 2012. Next slide. And this sort of show you a little more on the bio side. So this is that campus. It's 156 acres. In the far left, there's the large scale manufacturing, which have 15,000 liter reactors. Small scale, we have the warehouse FEM, which won that award, the central utilities building, as well as the QC and admin facility. So it's a huge footprint. Next slide. So this is the pharma site. The pharma site, we actually purchased it from ASI. ASI built it in 1995. In 2015, we actually acquired it from them. Since then, we've also been expanding the same facility. So we got our new antisense oligonucleotide facility built. We're actually building and expanding that one currently. 2019, we have a sterile filling operations that we built, another building. And then this year, or 2021, this facility is the gene therapy facility that we started in 2021 and we finished it last year. Next slide. This is just an overview of the campus. There's 123 acres. You can see on the far right, that's the oligosaccharide manufacturing. OSD is oral solid dose manufacturing. PF is parental filling facility. There's a QC facility, admin, and GTM is the gene therapy manufacturing site that's at the top left. That would be the site that we are looking to get the free trade zone designation for. And that's where we're going to be doing the clinical label and packing operation. Next, and I think that's about it for any questions or.
Well, if there are no questions, thank you, Mr. Prasma, for that presentation.
Appreciate it.
I work at the EPA, so that looks very familiar, that site.
Yes.
I had right across the street. Oh, sorry, there's a question. Yeah,
yes.
Sorry. Ms. Burton.
Michelle Burton, Durham County. I just want to know, will what's happening at the federal level affect the free trade zone designation? Or it doesn't really have an effect on that?
Probably a question for Lindsay, maybe?
Lindsay, do you want me to take that? Ms. Burton, we have not heard any issues impacting the foreign trade zone operation. There's really no huge amounts of federal money that are involved in terms of appropriations or grants or anything. It's really more of the designation and then the staff that work that. The Customs and Border Protection are involved in the work coming out of RDU Airport, but we've heard no indications that there are any potential impacts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, any additional questions?
Oh, yeah, I'd like to ask a question. This is Wilma.
Sure, yeah.
The little bit of information that he gave us, is that available on our website? So I would like to share that with the commissioners in Aberdeen. I thought that was something that, this is North Carolina, so I'd like for them to see some things that are going on here.
Lindsay, is this, so in the agenda, there is something about it, but I assume the presentation could be shared.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, if you're okay with us sharing it, I can share it out.
Yeah, I think the presentation, so I crafted it from one of our already approved it already went through legal for us. So it is one that we share. So I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
I can go ahead and email that to you. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that openness. Any additional questions?
Brett, this is Tom Adams from Moore County. It took me until a few minutes ago to be able to get my volume control to work, so I have joined.
Okay. What when we get a break, I'd love to hear more a little about yourself. But let's at least get this item closed up. If there are no other questions, or I guess to make things easier, does anybody object to placing this item on the consent agenda? Okay, well, hearing none, let's do that. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Prasma, for your presentation.
Thank you,
okay,
sir.
Great, Mr. Adams. Let's hear a little bit more about you and then Moore County, real quick.
Sure. I'm Tom Adams. I was recently elected to the Moore County Board of Commissioners. My background is in large national and international trade associations. I'm semi-retired here in Southern Pines, and delighted to be able to represent Moore County Commissioners on the board.
Well, thank you so much, and we're glad to have you on this board as well. Okay, next we have the audit presentation by Auditor Extraordinaire April Adams, that I recognize from my own work in Apex. April is going. Oh, sorry, I need to hand this off to Hope Talley, who will introduce April.
Hi, everyone. We have April Adams from Cherry Beckert with us. She's our engagement director for the audit team that completed our 2024 audit. So she's going to go through her presentation first, and then if you have questions, we can go through them afterwards.
Thank you, Hope.
Sure. Thanks, Hope. All right, so here we are. We're getting ready to go over the results of the June 30th, 2024 audit. And so we can go on to the next slide. I'll cover what I'm going to talk about. So one, I just want to talk about the client service team from Cherry Beckert, because I definitely didn't do this by myself, but also just iterate a couple of points about the relationship with your external auditor and how it relates to the organization. Then I'll cover the highest and most important thing of the report would be the results of the audit. I'll talk a little bit about internal controls. I promise not to bore you with that, but it's important to know that how they are a part of the audit and how we report on those. This next bullet, the firm calls it internal control and compliance, but really that's single audit. So we'll talk about how during the audit, we are looking at the federal grants that the organization receives and how they administer them and how we test those and report on those as a part of our audit. Then I'll identify and discuss if there are any corrected or uncorrected misstatements as a part of the audit. And then we get really kind of technical, but I promise we'll keep it high level. But there are some qualitative aspects to accounting practices that we just want to highlight as a part of the audit. I'll reiterate our independence as your external auditors. And then I've got a variety of other required communications that the audit standards that we follow are required to communicate to you as the Board of Governance. So I'll do my best to keep you guys with me and cover it as high level as I can. So here we go. All right, so the client service team. The most important thing to me on this slide for you to take away is that we are hired by you, the Board of Governance, and so therefore we are required to report to you. Most of the audit is conducted working with Hope and her team, but we do recognize that we are responsible to reporting to you and that we work for you, the Board of Governance. So as Hope mentioned, I'm the engagement director, and what that means is that I'm the one the firm is designated as responsible for. And I'm the one that puts the firm on the line by issuing the opinion based on procedures that we performed and understanding that they're sufficient enough and that we got enough evidence so that we can actually issue that opinion on your audited financial statements. Every audit that Cherry Beckert does is required to be reviewed by a second partner or a second director, somebody equal level to me. So Dan Goggerty did that for us this year. It's just good to know that you've got a second backstop, not only to myself, but you've got two high-level eyes looking at your information. Jennifer Moran came back for second year as the senior manager. She's really the one that helps execute the plan. We sit down at the beginning of the audit, we talk about the audit risks, and then we decide what the procedures are going to be. And she really kind of coordinates the staff and the seniors and executes to that plan. So she's an important part. All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so the results of the audit. So we did complete your audit and we dated it November 14th. We do conduct your audit in accordance with 2 sets of auditing standards. The reason for that is that there's generally accepted auditing standards. So any entity across the United States would get performed under those standards. And then because you're a government entity, there are some specific audit standards that are required as a part of that. And so what results from that is that we actually issue 2 separate opinions, one for each audit standard. Both of those opinions are what we call unmodified opinions. And so that is the highest level of assurance we can give you. Your financial statements are free from material misstatements. So that's the best results that you can get. So congratulations on that. As I mentioned, we also perform what we call a single. That's where we're looking in detail at your major programs related to the federal and state dollars that you guys, grant dollars that you receive and expend during the year. And so I'll cover on the next couple of slides forward which programs we actually looked at and tested in detail this year. But I'll tell you that we issued opinions, one for the federal and one for the state major programs. Both of those opinions were also unmodified, so clean opinions, best results you can get. So awesome all the way around as far as that goes. All right, internal controls. So high level, our audit, there's a lot of words on this slide, but I'll summarize it for you. Our audit, we are required by those audit standards to look at internal controls over financial reporting. And what we're looking cycles and policies related to that. So if you think about how does the organization receive cash, how does the organization disperse that cash? One of the things could be payroll, so we're looking at that. And then lastly, how does the organization, while it's capturing all of that stuff during the year in your financial system, how does it actually come out of that system? And we all know that those numbers match and are reported in your financial statements. So we look at that, how the organization does that as well. What this slide is telling you is that we don't actually express an opinion on your internal controls. We're doing that work and then we're reporting whether there's any deficiencies, whether they be a material weakness or a significant deficiency to you. So that leads us to the next slide. So these are the breakdowns of the types of internal control deficiencies that you can have. I am going to spare you the details on that because we didn't report any material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies related to the transaction cycles we look at. We don't say that there are no significant deficiencies because there is a chance that on the other cycles that we didn't look at, that there might be a significant deficiency that we didn't uncover. That's only say here material weaknesses, but through what we did look at, we didn't have any significant deficiencies. So good results as well. All right, so these are the programs, whether they be federal or state, that we looked at, and there's 14 different types of compliance requirements, categories that could apply to these programs. The agencies associated are nice enough to give us, maybe only 6 of those compliance requirements that are important to them to make sure that we look at and make sure that you're administering those in compliance with those requirements. And so happy to report we didn't issue any findings related to the programs that we did test and look at in detail this year. So again, best results that you can get. All right, so corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Another way to say this is that these are audit adjustments. These are things that might have come up and we deem to be necessary to either book, which would be a corrected misstatement, or not unnecessary to book, but not insignificant enough that we feel like the board would still need to know about them. We call those uncorrected misstatements. So they exist. We let them exist in the books and records, but we pass on them is what we say. But we just acknowledge that they are not perfect, but enough to just let you know they exist. But happy to tell you guys, we didn't have either corrected or uncorrected misstatements. So good results there as well. And what you can take away from that is once Hope has given us the trial balance or the general ledger, we didn't make any adjustments to that. So she's giving us the numbers that ended up in your financial statements. No adjustments were needed. So she's properly capturing all the activity and reporting it in your financial statements. All right, we're getting deep here into the qualitative aspects of accounting. There's really 4 major areas here. The first one would be identifying if there was any changes to your significant accounting policies. They are listed. If you dare to open those financial statements and read those footnotes, you'll see the first part of the footnotes will detail out what are the major significant accounting policies. Typically, year to year, in the past 5 years or so, there has been new policies adopted related to implementing new accounting standards that have been put out. This year was a by year. There were no significant accounting standards out there that had to be adopted, so there's no new accounting policies adopted for the year. Next topic would be related party transactions. This is just kind of letting you know that we do take a look at that and consider related party transactions as a part of our audit. If there were significant transactions that exist, we would be required to take a deep look into those transactions to make sure they're properly captured. But there were no significant related party transactions identified for our audit. Similarly, for significant and unusual transactions, we are looking for those during our audit and inquiring about them. Typically, if you did have a significant unusual transaction, it would be something your accounting team might not be familiar with reporting and what the standards say about how to do it. So you would want us to take a look, but no significant unusual transactions were identified as a part of the audit. So nothing to report here. For significant estimates, it is important for you to know that there are a fair amount of significant estimates that exist within your financial statements. Estimates are based on management's knowledge and experience and things that they know at the time or of the year end that were the biggest one would be the benefits related to your retirees. So your other post-employment benefits, which is your health insurance for your retirees, as well as the pension plan, which is what we're labeling here as the local government retiree systems. Those are fairly big estimates. They are based on actuaries, but those are only good as what's submitted to those actuaries, you know, the data that they're basing that calculation on. And so we do take a lot of consideration to how they get that information. All right. This is again just another little blurb on what estimates are based on, but I just covered that for the biggest ones. And then lastly, financial statements disclosures. This is a place for me to tell you if I felt like any of your financial statement notes were not neutral, consistent, or clear. I do think that if you were to read your financial statement footnotes, that you could read them and take away what you need as necessary from those. But no, I wouldn't say that any one particular note was more important than another. All right, independence. So we are your external auditors. So that means that we have a level of independence that we are required to maintain. We take in consideration of it before we actually sign and engage and agree to do the audit, but then we also have to make sure that nothing we're doing during the audit might impair that independence. And so sometimes there are threats to that independence based on additional non-attest services. So these are things that are outside the scope of an audit that sometimes we get asked to do as a part of the audit. So we do prepare the data collection form. This is where the organization reports to the federal government the results of that single audit. There is no judgment in that preparation of that form. We prepare it, and then both Hope and I have to review it and sign off on it electronically in their system. So we don't believe that impairs our independence. And then the second thing we do is we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements. We do reserve ourselves from making any kind of management judgment related to that. And we do believe that Hope is able to serve as the SKE, which is somebody with the skills, knowledge, and expertise to accept the responsibility of the work that we performed and accept it as her own. So we feel like all of that considerations allow us to maintain our independence. All right, so these next two slides have just got a variety of topics. They're just things that I have to communicate whether they existed or not. So we'll move through them fairly quickly. First would be if we had encountered any difficulties during our audit, which were none. We also didn't have any disagreements during the audit. We didn't consult any other auditors outside the team for any kind of special consultation for something we weren't familiar with. This last one's pretty important to me because it is what we base our opinion on as well as the management representations. There's a variety of things that we just need management to represent to us during the audit, and we rely upon that representation in order to issue the opinion. And so that letter is signed on the same date that we issue the report. And so that's good for us to have, but important for you to know what we are relying upon their word on some things. All right. And then we're not aware that management went out and consulted with any other auditors for any kind of second opinion on anything. We don't have any other findings or issues that we feel like we need to report to you as the board. As far as fraud and illegal acts, it's important to understand that this audit in particular is not designed to look specifically for fraud and illegal acts. We do consider the risk factors of those at the front of the audit, but it would be a much more intensive audit if we were looking for those things specifically. And should I come across those during the audit, I would be required to report those to you if we had identified anything that we thought was fraud or illegal act. And then lastly, going concern, the audit standards require us to consider, in our opinion, before we give it, whether the organization has the ability to be here in operations a year from now. And so we do believe that you guys will be here next, at least through November, probably beyond in operations. So that's great news. Good job. All right, other matters. So this is just a slide to kind of give you a high-level overview of how we actually issue our opinion on the financial statements and how it actually covers certain things in that report. It doesn't cover everything from the front cover to the back cover. So we do cover the basic financial statements, and then there are two sections. One is the supplementary information. So that is your management discussion and analysis. And then there's some data that you will find behind your footnotes that covers, I think it's 10 years worth of information on those pension plans and the other post-employment benefit plans. We actually don't extend our opinion on that information. So we note that here. And then the supplementary information. So these are the schedules of the funds that you will see after the footnotes. And we do extend what we call an in relation to opinion on that information because it actually ties up to the front in some way. So we are opining on that as well. All right, getting here to the end. So as I mentioned, there were GASB or accounting standards that have been issued in the past that changes your accounting principles from year to year. We do have one of those coming up for next year that will cause a change in accounting policies related to compensated absences. And they're in your financial statements already exist compensated absences, but that is your vacation time. And so this will cover if there's any sick time that's currently not recorded and not considered in accordance with the current accounting standards as a liability. This standard will change that perception of that or ideals on that. And so there will be certain parts of your sick leave that ultimately don't get used as service credits for the retirees. That will be accounted for as a liability in your financial statements. This will take a fair amount of Hope's time to come out with an estimate on that. And then it will be, again, another estimate added to your list of estimates that exist. But she will be working on that and get that recorded for next year. These other remaining new GASB standards, they will not have as what's the word I'm looking for, as significant impact to your financial statements. So I'll spare you the details on those. All right, I think my last slide is for questions. So I'll be glad to take any questions if anybody has questions or comments. Those are always good too. That's usually what I get. So
I would like to say thank you to the Terry Beckert team. And we found out April is leaving Terry Beckert, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. She has been a super great resource and big help over the last 2 years that I have been on board with CPRC. So I'm going to miss getting to correspond with you and wish you well in the next phase. So just wanted to
definitely
say thank you.
You guys have been great to work with.
Well, this is Susan Evans. Hi, Susan Evans. I'd just like to say thank you for the great, thorough report out. I thought it was a really nice delivery and made it easy for us to understand the scope of the work. So we appreciate you and good luck in your next endeavors.
Thank you. I feel like you've heard me a time or two, Susan. your name and face look familiar.
I think we all have, maybe. Yeah. Ms. Hamilton, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I also think this was a really good presentation, and we just actually had an audit report just yesterday, so it was really, really helpful. I do have one question, because I did look at some of the documents, and talking about general fund balance, that, and I'm looking at page 4 of it says the general fund reported an ending fund balance of about $2.9 million. Of this amount, $6 million is restricted by state statute. So I also looked at the table, so I know just an explanation of that, what that means. Because it would, that wouldn't make sense the way it's written, but I know it's something about how you're measuring fund balance.
Yeah, I'll defer to staff if they would answer, but I'm happy to answer as well for the calculation. But
You go right ahead. It's either way.
yeah, so this is just a calculation that the local government commission and the state statutes require you to report as an organization. But basically what they're saying is of the cash, you've got these receivables out there as well that you haven't yet received. And so it's taking an account of that as well as the liabilities that you might have out there. And so it's just kind of saying, hey, this fund balance really isn't available for you to use because either you haven't received it yet, or you have a liability already accounting for it. So that's basically what it's saying.
Okay, and so the 2.9 is available.
So the 2.9 is just going to be the balance of all that. You see how you've got your restricted for stabilization for state statute, and then you've got assigned, which assigned is really where management has said, hey, we have plans for some of this money for these particular programs, and have, told the program managers, yes, this is money that you can spend in the future that's been tagged for your program. So yeah, I would not say the 2.9 is available because you've got a negative unassigned balance of 8.3. It's really just a timing. It's really just a timing thing. This is a snapshot in time. And then because you've got that stabilization for state statute saying, hey, you got a receivable out here for cash you don't have yet. So therefore you don't have fund balance for it.
Okay.
I hope, is there anything
85%, but helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Lee, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Hope said and express appreciation to April and her team for all the good work. With April, it even goes back working with her in Durham County when I was in Durham County, and have always appreciated her professionalism and her expertise. So thank you for that. Really do appreciate it very much. We've had a long and very good relationship with April and Cherry Beckert as well. I also want to compliment the staff on this. And it starts with Hope as our Chief Finance Officer. She is outstanding and leads a wonderful finance team. And so I'm very appreciative of all the good work that they are doing and they have done. And they're being called on by other regional councils and other local governments to lend their expertise to assist. And so I appreciate that. I also want to say that, an audit like this is not just finance's responsibility. It's every employee. It's making sure that employees are invoicing correctly, following the purchasing policies. And I know sometimes staff gets tired of us talking about policies and procedures and different things, but the end result is what was presented tonight. And it really is a team effort of all of our employees. They all take public service very seriously, and they understand they have a responsibility with the public's money. And so I'm just very proud of the team we have here. So just wanted to convey that. And also the appreciation to the board for your oversight and the high expectations you have that we deliver to you a clean audit every year. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to recognize it's a year-long thing, right? I mean, it doesn't just stop with the audit. We're back tomorrow doing this work to make sure we get a clean audit again this time next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I think at least from my work in Apex, I know that there's a lot of work that goes in both from you guys, from Cherry Beckert and the staff to make this thing happen. So thank you so much for the presentation. And best wishes in your future endeavors.
Thanks. I'll still be in the government audit community, so you guys will probably still see me around. So.
Okay. We'll need the next superstar auditor, I guess, to step up in the team or somewhere around the area. Okay. Let's move on. Next, we have the I've been told that Delegate Kirk Smith from Lee County might be on. Kirk, we try to get you to say a few words about yourself before, and if you're able to now, we'd love to hear a few things about yourself in Lee County.
Well, first off, I apologize for dropping off. I haven't done a Zoom in quite a while. We've been doing meetings, so my apologies. I'm the Lee County Board Commission Chair, held that position since 2020, and back online here since our former delegate had chose not to run for re-election. So here I am.
Great. Well, welcome to the board, and we're really glad to have you. Okay, next, I'm going to pass it over to Lee to talk about, and this is a thing we mentioned, we had in a previous meeting, and we weren't able to quite finish it. So the Connected Region 2050 draft scope of work and funding strategy. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate having a little bit of time tonight to talk about what I feel like is a really important thing that regional councils are here for, and that's to help local governments in the region think about the future and vision and growth and how local governments interact with each other in terms of land use and all the important things that local governments are involved in. And so appreciate the comments and the thoughts. And it's been a few months since we've talked about this. So, and I know some of the executive committee members are new to the committee, and also we're not at the full board meeting when we talked about Connected Region and why I'm recommending that we start work on this. So I thought rather than go line by line around the scope of work, I'm going to redo the presentation I did at the Board of Delegates, giving a very high level overview of the Connected Region project and why I think it's important that we begin this process now. And then I'll mention just a couple things in the scope and talk a little bit about the funding strategy, but want to make sure we have time for questions or discussion. And I just want to reiterate that tonight, I'm not necessarily looking for a vote yay or a nay. We need feedback and need to understand where your questions are, concerns, what you think is good, where we may need to work on it. But we do want to start moving this forward fairly soon if you all feel like this is appropriate for us to be working on. So I don't know who the PowerPoint person is, but whoever it is, there you go. There's some animation in this, so we're going to see how we're coordinated here. But so yeah, so I just wanted to again say that with Connected Region, it's no secret that our region is experiencing really unprecedented growth. And I think it's time that we ask, what kind of region do we want to continue to be and to become? And how do we balance growth with livability, economic prosperity, transportation, housing, and all the things that are important to us? So next slide, please. So just a little bit of a preview about our region's growth. And if you want to start clicking, it'll put this on the slide. To put the region's growth into perspective, I'm comparing it to some other metropolitan areas, and we're growing at a pace similar to regions like Baltimore, Denver, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and San Diego. And by 2050, our population is going to nearly double, reaching 3.7 million. And with this level of expansion, I think the need for some sort of shared vision to guide development, infrastructure, and policy is really important. So the slides show you where we're heading and how it compares to MSAs that are of similar size. And if you'll click through, click again, if you don't mind, and you stop there. So population in 2000, 1.4 million, the population projected, and we're looking at a 10-county region. So as we're doing this, we're also including Harnett, Franklin, and Granville County. We're looking at a population nearing 4 million people, and on par with Minneapolis, larger than Baltimore MSA. So very large metro areas. Next slide. And again, I think you all know that the entire region is growing significantly and will continue to grow significantly over the next generation. We played a little game at the board meeting where I asked you to guess what the highest growth percentage county was going to be. And somebody got it right, but there were a few incorrect answers. And Franklin County, by percentage, is going to be growing more rapidly by percentage than Wake, Chatham, Harnett. Now we know raw numbers are different, right? But it's just to say the entire region is growing very rapidly. Even the ones with the lower growth numbers, Granville, Orange, are still significant numbers in terms of overall growth. So what does that mean? It means an additional 1.1 million people in the region, or it equals the Hartford MSA or the Salt Lake City MSA, or another Wake County basically being put into the region. So that's significant growth. So if you go to the next slide, I wanted to play for you that this idea of regional planning is nothing new. And in fact, New York City thought about this a long time ago. There are multiple examples of this, but this talks about the first regional plan for New York City back in 1929. If you'll hit play, hopefully the sound will go. It might not. All right, I don't think the sound's going to work. Oh, there it goes.
In the 1920s, the tri-state metropolitan region was a dynamic center for commerce, manufacturing, and culture. But poverty and overcrowding were endemic. Industry was growing, along with pollution, traffic, and noise. Transportation innovations better connected New York City to Long Island, the Hudson Valley, New Jersey, and Connecticut. But growth was haphazard and inefficient, based only on market forces, rather than what would work best for the region overall. Civic leaders began considering how to reorder the region in a more rational way, and how to enhance quality of life across the entire metro area without regard to political boundaries. Charles Dyer Norton, a veteran of the Chicago Plan, said at the time, "No plan of New York will command recognition unless it includes all the area in which all New Yorkers earn their livelihood and make their homes." On May 10, 1922, a group of prominent planners and civic leaders met to create a comprehensive plan for New York and its environs. This group, called the Committee on the Regional Plan, recruited experts in architecture, engineering, law, public health, and social welfare. For the next 7 years, they surveyed and analyzed the region, developing a plan to make it a better place to live and work. In 1929, the committee formally incorporated as Regional Plan Association, or RPA, which was then charged with carrying out the plan's recommendations. Then, on May 27th, RPA's first president, George McEnany, presented the regional plan for New York and its environs to the public. The plan proposed an ambitious and elaborate network of highways, railroads, and parks. It explored urban design and the relationship of development to open space, buildings to streets, and pedestrians to vehicle traffic. It also underscored the importance of public education about planning and zoning. Many of the plan's recommendations were implemented over the years, forever altering the shape of our built and natural environment. More than anything, the first regional plan presented a new way of thinking about development and governance, inspiring a movement of regional planning in the country and abroad.
Appreciate that. And I know some folks may say, well, we are not New York City, and that is very true. But I think that it's indicative of large metro areas across the US that regional planning and coming together and thinking about the vision are commonplace. And so if you'll go to the next slide. There you go. If you'll remember what I talked about earlier and how fast we're growing, right? And we're becoming more urbanized, and that's stretching beyond just Wake, Durham, and Orange counties. As you think about large metro areas, 57% of regions that are bigger than us have some sort of regional vision plan. But then as you go down, as regions get larger, the percentage of regions that have regional plans actually increase. And if you remember, our population will be close to 4 million by 2050, 2055. And 71% of those regions, 4 million or more, have some sort of regional plan. And so I think there's a recognition that as communities come together, as communities grow and get more complex, the need for even more coordination and thinking about the regional context really becomes more and more important, because we really are interdependent on each other. And even though decisions are local, they certainly have impact on each other, and the whole region needs to be able to work fairly seamlessly. So don't just take my word for it, please. We actually asked this question of elected officials and local government managers back in 2024 during the member survey, and we did it on purpose because we were thinking about connected region. We asked, does our region have a cohesive vision for land use, transportation, housing, and open space? And 70% of CPRC leaders either disagreed or selected that they didn't agree or disagree with the sentiment. So there's a large majority of folks that while we have really good plans for transportation, there's individual plans for housing, there's lots of CIPs running around for infrastructure, there's really not a cohesive regional vision that helps guide you all in your decision making locally and how you interact with the region as a whole. So next slide. During that meeting, you heard from two of my colleagues. One is the Columbus, Ohio Regional Council Director, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. The other one is the Regional Council Director for Salt Lake City. They talked about some of their regional planning efforts and talked specifically about results that they were seeing based on their planning efforts. And so I'd encourage you, if you wanted to go back and look, you can find these on the internet very easily and see about what other regions are doing around regional planning and visioning. Next slide. So why now? Why is now the time to think about a concerted effort around regional connected region plan? Next slide. So because our region's connected, if you go on any of our roads, you can see that day to day. Transportation's not the only reason that we're connected, but you see the cars going from Orange to Durham and from Durham to Wake and from Wake to Chatham. And you see the traffic flow and the commuter flows across our region, and people work and play and reside in all different places across our region, but call the region home. So each of these little vehicles represent about 5,000 one-way commutes, and we're crisscrossing the region every day to do business and to work. So that's just one reason. The other reason, and you can go to the next slide, is because our region, although extremely successful, we face challenges. I mean, every region does, right? And we face our own challenges. We face a lot of opportunities. We have faced them as a region very effectively and done a great job. But I would say that one of the things that complicates decision-making in this region is the fact that we are split into two MSAs. And I gave the example of poverty last time. And if you merely looked at poverty in the Raleigh-Cary MSA, you might get a very different story than if you looked at poverty in the Durham MSA, which also includes Chatham County. But we look at ourselves as an entire region. But when the federal government looks at us and looks at the census, they split us up into two separate areas. And so doing more holistic regional visioning and planning can help overcome some of these natural sort of breaks that are occurring in the way that data is presented at the state and federal level. I found another example since the last board meeting that I thought was interesting. If you go to the next slide, it's not just us government folks that are that recognize the region as more than just the Raleigh or the Durham MSA, but really look at the whole sort of 10 county area as a holistic region. You may know that there's some folks really pushing and promoting our region for a Major League Baseball team. And so as they market themselves, they actually are talking about the fact that don't look at us as just Raleigh. Look at us as the Raleigh-Durham region. And I wanted to read to you really quick what they have on their own website in terms of data. And I thought it was really interesting in terms of regional planning. They say an effort's underway to recruit a Major League Baseball team to the region. Did you know that the Triangle's population aligns with MLB markets such as Milwaukee, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, all of which have Major League Baseball teams? Measuring the Triangle's population compared to other metro areas that support MLB teams sounds like it'd be easy. However, it's quite complicated. Thanks to definitions that don't consider the unique setup of the Triangle, prior to 2000, the area's growth and population were measured using the Raleigh-Durham MSA. The MSA is a common data point that cities use to measure population and density within a region's commuter belt. Because of the Triangle's unique layout, 3 key population centers fall within one commuter belt and are less than 25 miles apart. The combined MSA made sense. But in 2000, the census split Raleigh and Durham MSA thanks to adjustments to the definition of a metro statistical area. The new definition considered the percentage of commuters who travel into the city. However, a region has a central area called Research Triangle Park between Durham and Raleigh, where most of our workforce commutes. The county line runs directly through the middle of RTP. So how do we get a true idea of how the Triangle would compare to other MLB metro regions in terms of population? The official Raleigh MSA alone isn't enough to give an accurate representation anymore. Instead, we can get a more meaningful apples-to-apples comparison by recombining the MSA simply by adding Raleigh and Durham's MSA together. And according to the latest numbers, the Raleigh-Durham MSAs have a total population of 2.1 million people. So it's interesting that as MLB folks are talking about MLB, they are talking about the region holistically, and found that a couple days ago and thought it was interesting. So what makes our region unique? If you go to the next slide, It's because leaders like you and others have always come together and taken risks and collaborated, and it's paid off. A prime example of that is this Research Triangle Development Guide, which is probably the last really comprehensive regional plan that was done for the entire regional area in 1969. And it really thought about what's going to happen to this region if this new thing called Research Triangle Park actually succeeds. And some of the predictions in there are actually pretty spot on in terms of what was going to happen to the region. And so I think we have that opportunity again. So if you go to the next slide. Because of the continued rapid growth moving into more counties, it really means that a regional vision and plan are needed now more than ever. And I wanted to address what some things a plan is not. A regional plan in no way is meant to prescribe specific plans onto local decision makers. That's local zoning, those are decisions to be made by local governments. It's not another level or another layer of bureaucracy. It's meaning it's bringing people together to think about the region as a whole. It doesn't detract or lessen what's working well. It really amplifies that and finds best practices to be able to use in other parts of the region. And it doesn't substitute or duplicate other plans that are important at the local regional level. Instead, the intent of the plan is to, if you go to the next slide, it's really about bringing the entire region together to shape a long-term vision, identifying what's working and scaling to that, creating a strong unified regional voice at the state and federal level, providing a foundation for transportation, housing, and infrastructure plans, and also helping to provide newly elected officials and other leaders a document and a foundation to understand the regional context and what makes this region really great. So if you go to the next slide, in order to make something like this successful, we really need all the local governments to be engaged, because the strength of the region is really about everyone. And so the next slide talks a little bit about what we think it will take to be able to do something like this. As we've gone through the planning process, about $1.5 million over about 3 years, which for us is a rather large project. But when you look at other large regional sort of planning efforts, I think $1.5 million is pretty reasonable if you look at some of the other plans and some of the other efforts that have gone on over the years. Next slide. And the good news is that we already have commitments from some partners, and we have what we feel like will be more commitments, but they've asked where the local governments are and if the local governments would be willing to sort of be first in, right, before they come to the table. And so just as an example of some of the commitments we already have, next slide. Capital Broadcasting Company has committed $300,000 in-kind assistance around some of the items that would need to be done for the plan. The Research Triangle Foundation has committed funding. The Regional Transportation Alliance has committed funding. And the Triangle Community Coalition also has expressed a lot of interest, but has asked for what the local governments may commit to before they sort of put a number on the table. And those are just a few initial conversations we've had. So if you go to the next slide. Oh, that's consent. Okay. What I've got in your packet is the scope of work that we have been working on for quite some time and how a regional planning process would move forward And at the last executive committee meeting, I went through that document, and I'm not going to bore you with that again, but wanted to see if you all had any questions about what a regional plan and vision would look like, the scope of work, some ideas around fundraising for the local governments is attached to the end. This is just staff's initial ideas. The more money that maybe we could raise from others could lower those amounts. And we've tried to make it pretty reasonable over a 3 or 4 year time period as well. So happy to answer any questions that you have. And Mr. Gant, I see Ms. Burton's hand up, but I'll let you steer the ship if you want to, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Lee. Yeah. I have a quick comment first, and I'd love to have questions and comments from everybody else. I worry sometimes about I think we're doing great as a region in general. Obviously the growth is a sign of that. But I see cities that I don't want to become that are bigger than us. And I won't mention what they are, but where the growth seems haphazard, the transportation network seems inadequate. The cities, you never know which one you're in, and they kind of meld in a way that I think is bad. So anyway, I think places that have a plan are more likely to avoid that sprawlish mess that I see sometimes when I travel to other places. And I think this plan is one way that we can have a vision that may help us thrive and succeed better long term, and try to avoid some of those things that maybe you guys agree that some of our neighboring larger communities in the Southeast and Midwest mostly suffer from. So anyway, I'll just say that. I think I saw Miss Burton's hand first.
Yes, thank you, Lee, for that presentation. Excuse me. The question I have is that 1.5 for the whole entire 2.5, 3 year period, or 1.5 for each year?
Good question. It's for the entire project, so it's 1.5 over 3 years.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm not sure who was next. I think on my screen it looks like Susan.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, Lee, let me say that I'm very supportive of trying to get us closer to regional planning. I'm very excited about the potential. I also think it's a little scary, but scary because how do we pull it off is what I mean by that. Sure. But I did want to ask specifically, and I guess I could go out and read some of these other cities' plans, but you mentioned earlier how the regional plan wouldn't be prescriptive towards certain local governments, zoning and so forth. But it seems to me that some of that, well, while we can't, it has to be buy-in that we come to the table and we all agree this is what needs to happen, I suppose. Sure. But I know from the work that I do on the MPO and also on the Go Triangle Board and others here involved in that, we're looking at transit and transportation, and we're talking a lot about transit-oriented development and all those things. We're also at the county level at Wake because of our supply and demand problems with housing. We're looking, leaning into the fact that we really have to have more density as we move forward in the future. So my question really is, help me understand what this regional plan would do if it's not prescribing to the local municipalities how to do their land planning and zoning.
Sure. So we as a regional organization do not have anything that allows us to regulate or to prescribe anything to the local governments. But I actually think that's the power of the organization, and it's what you just said, right? The power is bringing people together and it's not easy, right? Coming to consensus around a vision of the region for the future, and then bringing people along on what's needed to achieve that vision, right? And so it's not going to prescribe things, but it certainly is going to have recommendations and strategies and suggestions. And part of what I've contemplated in this is that part of what we're doing as a regional council would have to align with the regional plan in order for us to, provide services. So if we wanted an example, right, if a local government wanted our services to help with a land use plan after this is done, part of the contract would be, well, that's fine, but it has to align with the regional plan, right? So I think there are ways that we can work through that. But the real power is bringing the people together, getting excited about the future, agreeing on a scenario for the region that makes sense, and then working together on what is that plan to get us there. And then recognizing local governments and private sector and others that are doing the work, right? And checking in and having accountability built in to see how we're making progress toward those goals.
Perfect. And that's what I was thinking. And let me just say, I understand completely that this organization would have no jurisdiction over municipalities.
Yes,
that is the same thing we face at the county level.
Absolutely.
In terms of land planning and zoning, we actually only control the unincorporated areas. So we can't really tell our 12 municipalities what to do. But we are trying to convene with them more and talk, housing and all those things. But I think it's a great idea if we can get the region engaged and get the municipal and government leaders from all areas to buy into a vision, then that's the best way for us to get there. So I just love the idea. And I just trying to figure out how we make it happen. But I almost feel like, thinking about the Wake County side, and other people can weigh in on what would work for their community. But I think that I would want to have Central Pines come and do a presentation to my board in a work session or something about this whole idea.
Sure.
And then get buy-in that way.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to just real quickly say is this, 3 years, right? This is not this is the beginning of what we would see as a evergreen process, something that would continually be going on. And it may just be, so I talked about the scenario planning, right? We may get into this and say, hey, what feels right now is just to do the scenario planning, sort of what the Columbus, Ohio Regional Council did, and just say, here are 4 possibilities for the region, and just having community conversations and regional conversations around which scenario makes sense. And that may take 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? But the Columbus area has seen great results just from that exercise. And so part of this is sort of getting into it and then being willing to be flexible, because if after a year it doesn't quite feel right, we may need to pivot a little bit and change our tactics to do something that feels better for the region. So I just wanted to add that real quick.
So I mean, basically, it's going to involve a lot of brainstorming.
Yes, ma'am.
and getting professionals to the table, like they did in New York City, but brainstorming with all of us and figuring it out as we go. But I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Hamilton, I think you were next.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to start and first say thank you for this presentation, because every time I hear it, I get a better sense of what this Connected Region 2050 would be. I want to echo Commissioner Evans' point about needing to come and present on this, because one of the things when I was reading through this, I thought I need to speak to my board. I mean, I have my thoughts, but that really it's so important to get the buy-in And, and the third thing is just, to acknowledge that, with the change in the federal administration, there is extreme concern about money, in our county, and that we are already looking to make sure there's going to be enough to do the most important things to cover the most vulnerable folks. So I just put that out there to say that, I know for one, I'm going to look at every dollar, right? And want to make sure that any investment is something that's going to have a payoff. Mm-hmm. And I do have concerns that, and partly because how hard it is to get that kind of consensus within Orange County around planning and what the vision is. And we are going to be talking about our comprehensive plan in the next few months. And I think it's going to be contentious a little bit. We had the light rail debacle, right? So there's a lot of sensitivity about, like, again, if it's hard enough having a vision for all of Orange County or with neighboring counties, then can this work? And is it enough just to bring folks together, especially in this environment where I think everyone's going to feel squeezed to provide services to their residents?
I appreciate that and understand exactly where you're coming from. And I think that's part of why we have to be flexible, right? And we've been really mindful of trying to do as much work internally as we can, right, to keep costs down. And we may just have to phase this, right? We may have to do part of it, or maybe we think about how to do a few counties here and a few counties there and then bring it all together. So this is why this conversation is important, Ms. Hamilton, is because we need to hear all the perspectives, because we want to make sure if we do it, we're doing it correctly and doing it in a way that folks can get on board. And I hear you 100% and understand where you're coming from. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Mr. Adams next.
Sure. Thank you very much. As I look at it, I agree with the earlier speaker, and I'm sorry I don't know everyone's names yet. I'll work on that as time goes on. I think we would need to do some type of presentation to at least where a county would be concerned, the county boards. We're in the process and more of updating our 2013 land use plan, and just trying to do something that should be as simple as that. We have a huge dichotomy between the lower part of the county, which is very much engaged in tourism and increasingly becoming an economic hub for the southern tier of counties with a lot of growth in terms of our retail, which is occurring, versus the northern part of the county, which is we're concerned that is able to retain its rural flavor and not serve eventually as simply a bedroom hub for the northern part of this region. So I think there would be a lot of sensitivity to it, particularly given the disparity in the amount of population in the northern part of the region and that in the southern. Even though, as you can see from the earlier slide, Moore County being one of the, on a percentage basis, one of the faster growing segments of where we are. So I do think it's going to take some time, and I appreciate Ms. Hamilton's concern about the money. I think all of us are worried, or not worried, but prepared to have to make hard decisions depending on how much federal funding we do have. So yeah, I think conceptually it's a good idea, but it will take some sales.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Appreciate it.
And thanks for those comments. We had someone in the chat, Ms. Green.
Yeah, that was me, and I'm sorry, I just can't find the little hand on my.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. So I, as Lee might guess, I'm all in favor of regional planning, and I know a few years ago, we had a conversation about just doing a regional housing study or something to that effect, and my memory is that it kind of didn't happen because there were so many different interests and different ways to approach housing. Of course, this is more than housing, but what I want to say at this juncture is, like Susan, I'm on Go Triangle Board, and like Susan and others, I'm on an MPO, the newly named Triangle West TPO. And by the way, one of the ways that we're different, Lee, is not just that we have 2 MSAs, we have 2 NPOs plus all the RPOs in the region. It was interesting to learn a while back that Minneapolis-St. Paul is just 1 NPO, for example. So we have all of that. I think going back to Go Triangle and the NPOs, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. They're both of those entities, Go Triangle and the MTO, the 2 MPOs, which are working pretty much collectively on the most recent MTA. I'm already concerned that those plans might not be in sync. My concern is we've got at a minimum 3 or 4 different organizations working on regional plans of some sort. And this one I understand, I mean, I realize would be more than transit and housing, but because it's got economic development and other, other things. But largely it is going to be transit and housing. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about it's all pulling together in a meaningful way. And I'll give you 2 examples that I picked up from a transit conference that Susan and I were at last fall. There's an organization in the Seattle area called Sound Transit. They are, I forget which, I think they're more or less like Central Pines. They are the COG. Or maybe they're more like Go Triangle. Anyway, there's their equivalent of a COG, there's their equivalent of Go Triangle, there is a handful of different transit agencies within that, and they are all bound together by one interlocal agreement or memorandum of understanding. So they work together. And then similarly in the Charlottesville area, there's a group that brings those similar groups together. And I've been advocating for this a little bit at Go Triangle. That's my concern, is that we really need to, I think it's come to this point right now because we all do recognize how fast and how much the region is growing. We all want to do the right thing to support transit and housing and all these good planning efforts, but it's not good if we're all just doing like that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I will say that as we've had conversations with the 2 MPO directors, they have been very supportive of this effort and view it as very necessary. And so to address the question, I think what you see in some of the other regions and what's missing here in this region is that overall vision of the region, right? And how it's going to grow with respect to land use, right? And where things, how we're going to grow together. And then having that help inform those more tactical and technical plans like the transportation plan, like housing plans. And so I don't have any research to base this on, but I would say that not the only reason, but part of the reason why things have been a little more difficult at times is because there hasn't been sort of a regional vision or plan to point to, right? That everybody can sort of see and get on board with. And so we as the regional planning organization has sort of left some of these other entities to sort of do it on their own, right? And so I think the fact that one hasn't been done since the 60s is not good. And my hope is that by doing this, it will not be easy, but in the future, it could make some of these other things easier to do and more aligned. And you'll hopefully start seeing that connectivity. And during this process, I would expect some of those conversations about how entities work together, how planning is done, probably to come up as part of the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you. That's helpful. I think that needs to be at the beginning of the conversations is how we're going to work together. And I'm sorry, I haven't read the background material for today and I missed the other delegate meeting, and so maybe this is all right in there, but this is a book I really like. It's called The Regional City from 2001. So it's not new, but it's a really good case study of Seattle, Portland, Salt Lake City, and one other city. But one thing I haven't read it in a while, but one thing I do remember taking away from it is, gosh, well, those cities are lucky in that they have, if not necessarily a mandate from the state, they have permission from the state. They have there's sort of a built-in pipeline between the state and what we're doing. What they're doing. And so that could be what's missing here, is that we don't have that kind of impetus to really cause us to want to do this. And that's probably not coming anytime soon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for those comments. Mr. Smith, I think you were next.
There, I transitioned without dropping off the screen. I find this interesting and enlightening and important. The only concern I have is when I was looking at the breakdown on the contributions asked for Lee County, and then I looked down at Sanford, and unlike Susan Evans, who has 12 municipalities and incorporated areas, I only have 2. So what you're asking is, Lee County, which, by the way, Sanford City residents and Broadway pay Lee County taxes. So I would kind of encourage, you may want to consider just taking Sanford's contribution out of there and add it to the county.
Okay.
I'm looking out for the taxpayer.
I understand. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Who's it? Sorry.
I'm sorry. This is a first run, and at the numbers and all that, input's really important. And what we hope is that we could actually lower the numbers eventually if we can get additional support. But wanted to give some sort of idea of potential funding strategies for some comments. So thank you for that, sir.
Susan, you're back.
Just real quickly, I heard some of the concerns around how we will fund this, and just wondered if there wouldn't be an appetite from the business community to participate more robustly. I mean, they certainly have a vested interest in this. Much like the chambers all come together to fund the Transportation Alliance. I don't know if it's the chambers directly, but we could start by reaching out to them. I'm just wondering if we couldn't find more business partners in addition to Capital Broadcasting who'd be willing to contribute to the effort.
Absolutely. And we would definitely be looking at other partners to help fund. The one initial piece of feedback that we have heard from a few that we've approached is a desire to see some of the local governments sort of be first in, right? To show because you all are the ones in terms of having to implement, right? And so what I've heard is, well, we're happy. It's important. We want to participate, but we just want to see some buy-in from the local governments before we commit. So it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg thing, right? So we're trying to figure all that out. But yes, I completely agree that I think business financial support and also their involvement in the actual process as well is going to be extremely important. And some of our anchor institutions. So not just, the state, the universities, the whole gamut of the folks that are involved in growth and are growing fast as well because of the region's growth.
Thank you. I'm trying to find the packet that you made reference to that we received. Is that not attached to the agenda? Is that somewhere else?
It should be right after the scope of work should follow right after the agenda memo I did.
Okay, I just hadn't gotten far enough down, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to send it out to the committee as well as a separate email, just so you'll have it sort of unattached from the agenda. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, because I just wanted to see, how much of that 1.5 million are we trying to get from the member organizations from CPRC?
It begins on page 74.
Okay, no wonder.
It's after the audit, so you kind of have to get all through the audit, and then it's right past that.
Got it.
Okay. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Thank you, everybody. Really great feedback, and we'll digest this and be back again with some modifications and further conversation. But thank you for the time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Okay. Excellent. Okay, I've lost my agenda, but fortunately we have it on the screen here. Next, we have the consent agenda, and I believe, let me review those. Some minutes from the previous meetings, and as you guys heard, the FTZ approval for the Biogen we just heard. There's a budget amendment and a traffic demand management grant for NCDOT. Any questions about those items? So I believe, Beth, I hand it over to you for a vote.
Alrighty, we are going to start with Aberdeen.
Will Mulaney, Aberdeen votes aye.
Let me get over here to the screen. Apex.
Brett Gant, aye.
Carrborough.
Randy Haven O'Donnell, aye.
Chatham County. City of Durham. Durham County.
Michelle Burton, I vote aye.
Johnston County. Lee County.
Kirk Smith, I vote aye.
Moore County.
Tom Adams, I vote aye.
Orange County.
Gene Hamilton, aye.
Pittsburgh.
Baldwin, aye. Pamela
Sanford.
Baldwin, aye.
Gotcha. Sanford. Selma.
Byron McAllister, aye.
Wake County.
Susan Evans, aye.
All right. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. I have my agenda back now, so we're good to go. Thank you, everybody, for that vote. Next, we have the Executive Director's report. Lee, would you report this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things I wanted to update the executive committee on. First is, I've given you all a few updates by email on some of the impacts we have seen from the federal funding issues. And if anybody has any questions or wants to talk to me further about that, feel free to give me a call. There's really no additional updates that we have at this time. We have had to unfortunately let one employee know that that we'll be laying them off based on some of this, but we feel relatively assured that we'll be able to move through the rest of the fiscal year with the funding that we have, unless we get something unexpected. So really appreciate staff and their hard work. And as we've changed projects that staff have worked on and moved around. They've all been very understanding, and I really appreciate that very much. We talked about the auditor and that it was April's last audit, and it feels like there's like several of these now that I'm going to have to tell you about. That I don't know if it's just like all of a sudden we've gotten some notices of some things ending that we've enjoyed for a number of years. So we talked to you about our auditor about 3 or 4 days after the auditor let us know. I got a call from our attorney, Chris Gardner, that he has taken a new job and will be leaving Tharrington Smith. And so I spoke to one of his colleagues today. So we're going to have a change in terms of legal representation. We've enjoyed working with Chris for close to 8 years, I believe. He's done a very nice job representing the organization. And then yesterday, or the day before yesterday, we got an email from the League of Municipalities that they are ending their health benefit trust program, which for us is our health insurance provider. So we are going to be bidding out our health insurance and looking for other options. We do this every once in a while anyways, but it is impacting some other local governments, and we've been talking to them about how we might be able to assist them, because the league not only provided a pool for health insurance, they also provided short-term disability, life insurance, vision, and dental. So several local governments are impacted in different ways based on which program they were taking part in. So it was like boom, boom, boom. Within 2 weeks, those all hit at the same time. So, you know, there's always change. So we'll continue to navigate through that. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Appreciate everybody's time. It's good to talk to everybody.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you for that report. Next is the chair's report. That's me. I guess the one item I thought I might share with you guys is that the officers and I have been working on a new formalized evaluation for Lee, our executive director. This effort, I think, we're hopeful that it's will make the evaluation more transparent, more easily tracked year to year. But my understanding is that we're going to finalize that soon, and you guys will be the ones doing the evaluation in the next few months. I'm not sure the timing, but we're hopeful that this exercise has been one that it makes this evaluation a better process than maybe it has been. And what I've heard from past years is maybe a little bit of unhappiness that it's been a little bit too fluid or ambiguous, and we're trying to make it a formalized, June, more formalized process I hope everybody is happy with. So anyway, that's getting ready to be finalized soon. Okay, it's only 7:42, and therefore we have a little time for Around the Region that we've kind of had to skip short in the past few meetings. And I think I have a good question for you guys. Hopefully this is sparks some interest. My question for everybody to prompt a discussion is, if you could time travel, what would you tell your council or commission 20 years ago that they wish that you know now and you wish they had known 20 years ago? Maybe a project, maybe a initiative, I'm not sure, but a time travel question. So anybody who wants to speak up, love to hear it.
Mr. Chair, I have 20 years that probably fits that bill.
Okay.
Lee County used to run water and sewer. And over 20 years ago, the Board of Commissioners unloaded water and sewer. Now, Sanford has the glorious reputation of, if you want sewer for your concentrated development, you have to voluntarily annex your property. And needless to say, that is one of our issues that we're dealing with in Lee County, is that Sanford has the glorious ability to non-concurrent or non-contingent annexation. And but part of what that has brought forth is we're going to be working on some conservation easements for agriculture, both the voluntary ag districts and enhanced ag districts, as well as working with the Triangle Lands Conservancy. So now we're dealing with pressures of expansion and growth and developers moving in and building wonderful housing developments and accessing all sorts of county property. So yeah, I would have traveled back and said, don't you dare.
Nice. Okay, Mr. Adams.
I've got one that'll kind of go along with that. 20 or more years ago, the federal government spent a considerable amount of money in making money available to put in countywide water and sewer systems. And my understanding is it was about the county share would have been about 10 cents on the dollar, and our commissioners at the time elected not to do that. So we're now grappling not only with having to do a water project, but how we're going to move the water from one end of the county to the other. So I wish they'd made a different decision back then.
Thanks. Ms. Burton.
Yeah, this is my first year on the Durham County Board of Commissioners, but I found out that in 2008, certain counties had the opportunity to do a food and beverage tax, and they could have just accepted it. And Wake County did it, Mecklenburg County did it. Durham County decided to put it before a vote with the voters, and the voters voted it down. And we're losing out on millions of dollars in food and beverage taxes and money that we can use, because what the story was told to me, residents thought it was going to tax places like McDonald's, Wendy's, but it was really going after these very ritzy restaurants that we have in Durham County. And it was before the Durham DPAC got big and the American Tobacco and all of that. So I would have just told, as a commissioner, told our legislatures, our delegation, just do it.
Thanks. I don't see a hand right now, so I guess mine, I would say, is for Apex would be, I really wish previous council had 20 years ago land banked a lot more land when it was a lot cheaper. And maybe that's an obvious one, but we have so many projects related to parks, related to housing, affordable housing potentially, that relate to like library spots, that if we had done that when it was much more affordable, I think we'd be off in a much better state than we are now. And my understanding was some of the council members at the time wanted to do that, and there just wasn't support, for various reasons, to do a lot of land banking. And I think it would have been great. Ms. Evans.
Well, everything that we talked about earlier in regional planning, I wish we had started on more. Not that we weren't doing anything, but one thing in particular, and I don't know what year this was, and it might not have been fully 20 years ago, but there was a time when the federal government was making funding available to certain metropolitan areas to fund rail projects. And for whatever reason, the Wake County Commissioner said, no, we don't need that. And Charlotte got all the money that should have been divided between the two of us. And now here we are in 2024, struggling to find any way to build out any type of rail project. It was just so short-sighted that we did not seize the day when we had the opportunity.
Thanks. I think a theme here is, I mean, in my experience, people who are elected officials love to kind of critique the past people. And I assume they'll do that for us too, for various reasons. But I appreciate that. And I wish, I'm a big rail fan. I wish they had done that as well. Anybody else want to talk bad about your past colleagues?
I'll take a different take on this. This is Byron McAllister, town of Selma. I would just like to go through the past few years, and with all the contractors putting new fiber through all our communities here in Johnston County, I would like to go ahead and tell them exactly where they cut the gas line, where they cut the electric line, where they cut the water line, and make sure they are aware of what's coming before they hit it, so that I don't have to take those phone calls.
I'm gonna unmute to laugh at that because that certainly happened in Orange County.
Yeah, we've had something similar with the fiber here in Apex. So common theme, it seems. Anybody else? Okay, well, maybe let's have a talk. Anybody want to commend what their council or commission did 20 years ago? Perhaps.
That's never going to happen, Chairman Gay. Never.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, I guess the way I feel about that is I think our whole region at least has done a lot of good in the planning, in development, transportation, that we are where we are because of some good decisions. Maybe not all good, but I think we do owe some debt to our predecessors. Okay. Oh, yes, Randy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to commend the Orange County Commissioners 20 years ago. The Orange County Commissioners, under the chairmanship of Moses Carey, reconstituted the Library Task Force, and in partnership with Carborough, the Orange County Library will have its grand opening in Carborough, the Carborough branch, March 21st. So something new happened. So Jean and Sally, please convey that to the commissioners.
Gosh, we hadn't heard the date yet. Thank you.
Yes, the new date just was sent to me. But yeah, that was, if that library task force wasn't reconstituted in 2005, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you.
Nice. Thanks. Anybody else? Well, on that positive note, thank you guys so much for doing the Around the Region, and thank you so much for sticking out this meeting on a weeknight. And I'm sure there's other things that maybe we'd all like to do. But with that said, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Did you get that, Beth? The motion second? Okay. With no other business on the agenda, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Good night. Everybody have a good night.